Hello guys, so this is going to be the second part of my series on WordPress about the WordPress database, dealing with the database inside WordPress. So here what I've opened here is this page, in the WordPress developer resources. I have this page open here on it's on it's on https developer.wordpress.org reference/classes/wpdb. It is reference for wpdb class. So this wpdb class is going to be important in this particular video because we are basically talking about it from the beginning until the end. So what this is, the wpdb class, its instance represents a database connection. It represents database connection. So if you want to have your own database connection inside WordPress, you would instantiate wpdb class. But in our case here, and probably in everyone else's case, when WordPress runs, we are actually given something called wpdb, which is an instance of wpdb class as a global variable that represents the connection that is there to the WordPress database. That is the one we are going to be dealing with, writing code to it and inserting stuff, editing, as well as deleting. So when it comes to working with database inside WordPress, there are about like 2 or 3 things involved. The first part is going to do with actually managing your tables. That is creating one, editing columns on that table, even deleting columns, as well as deleting tables. And then there is creating, reading, updating, and deleting from those tables. That is doing the CRUD on the tables. Then the third would be, the miscellaneous things, knowing things about our queries, knowing things about our tables, our databases, debugging stuff. Okay, so this video is actually going to be sort of divided into these 3 parts. The first part, we are going to talk about dealing with managing your tables, and probably from that you can also understand how to create your own database and end up managing tables on it. But creating running a new instance of wpdb is out of the scope of this video. But as you can see already from here, from this documentation here, they are saying in the rare case you need to connect to another database, instantiate your own object from wpdb class with your own database connection information, which means that you can actually have more than one database powering a single WordPress site, which is something beyond the scope of this particular video. But if you want to experiment, it's really something that you can do, because after finishing this video you would get the sense of how you would go about it actually. Now what I'm going to do is I have an instance of WordPress installed here. I have my own WordPress running, so I'm going to open it, and we go to themes, appearance themes, and I have these themes installed. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a classic theme we are going to use as a playground to experiment and write code around database management. And I should admit that writing code about database inside a theme, like hardcore code database, a database code inside a theme is probably not the right idea. Maybe you could have a plugin that creates a table, inside your WordPress installations database, and then when it is activated, it would do that. It would create a table, and then when it is deleted, it would delete that table. That is actually how it's done in real world. But if I have a theme, it should give you, a good playground. If we have a theme, it should give us a good playground to actually have a feel of the code. But it is not necessarily a representation of best practices. So I'm going to create a theme. So let me go here and go to site folder, and then inside app public, inside WP content themes, here I will create a theme. Let me call it databases. Create it, and then I'm going to open it with Visual Studio Code. It is open. Is it open? Yes, it is. And I will close everything here so that I have space. So we have it here. What we need for something to be actually called a theme is the style.css, and then in there, so it's taking long to create the file. I guess my computer is running out of memory or something like that. Then in here we are going to have a comment. We're going to have a comment, and inside this comment we can have, just theme name. Okay, so for you to know more about this comment, actually you can go ahead and Google search it on wordpress.org or the codex. They will talk about this, like the style.css file for classic themes. So here I'm going to say theme name, and I'm going to call it database theme, because it is a database theme. And then we are going to need at least index.php as a template. And it's taking forever again, but now we have it. So if I come here and refresh, I should see the theme as it is here, and I'm going to activate it. And if we go ahead and visit the site, we are going to see nothing, because there is nothing. So what we are going to do is I'm going to just write hello databases, and then refresh. That is what we see there. And now what I'm going to do is start using the WP-DB object that has been created for us when the WordPress life cycle started. So the instance is actually a global variable, so we need to use global. Before that, let's make sure that we are inside PHP. So we say global, and then say WP-DB, right? This is the object we are going to deal with. So if you want to just look at how it looks like, you can put our pre-tags here. Let's echo pre-tags. So this is HTML echo pre, And then in there we can go ahead and print R the WP DB, okay, so that we actually see that it's a thing that exists. So here it is an object of WPDB. So it's an instance of WPDB class. Now let's go ahead and start talking about actually doing something useful with WPDB. So first we are going to actually create a table. Let me refresh to make sure that there is nothing here. So we are going to start by creating a table inside our database, right? So for us to actually do that, we need a method called query. And the way I look at query is that it is a method, very generic. It's a generic method that you'd give a MySQL query, and then it would run it and does what it is to do. So here it takes in a query. And I guess let's just go back here and look for it inside WPDB documentation. Control F. I'm going to look for query. Yes, I had this searched before, and here it is. I'm going to open it in new tab, and here, so WPDB query, it takes in a string as a query, and then it returns an integer or a boolean. So performs a database query using current database connection. Okay, this is what it does. It uses the current database connection to perform a database query, and then they say more information can be found in the documentation page. I'm not sure where the documentation page is. Is it here? I don't think so, because if I click here, I'm still at the same place. You can just go ahead and search for WPDB query. You should get the full documentation, or do they mean this documentation? I'm not sure. Okay, so what it returns is it's an integer or a boolean. Now they're saying it returns a boolean true for these create, outer, truncate, and drop queries. Okay, these look like queries for actually managing your tables and stuff like that, which is sort of like the first part where we would be concerned with dealing with the database, that is to actually create, alter, truncate, and drop queries. And then it returns a number of rows affected or selected for all other queries. Then it would return boolean false on error, right? So this should be very clear. So now we are going to go ahead and use the create on it. So our query here, we are declaring variable query, which is a string, right? Which is coming here. And then our query is going to create table if not exists. If not exists, the table, we are going to call it employees. And then it will have the following columns. We are going to have an ID, which is going to be an integer, and it will auto increment. And of course, it's going to be the primary key. The name is going to be a variable character, varchar of size 50. and then we're going to have age, which should be an integer, as well as dpt for department, which is going to be a varchar variable character of length, where am I, varchar of length 50 again. Then what else? We're going to give a salary, which should be a decimal of size 10 and 2 decimal places. So this is the query. So here, if you look here, right, we are calling the table employees. But now let's look at our databases. Let's have a look at our database tables. If we come here and go to databases and open with adminer, you see our tables do have prefixes WP, and this prefix is set when you are installing your WordPress, and we want our table to our new table to automatically pick that one also. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to come across another property that is inside WPDB. Okay, so here I'm going to create a variable and call it table name, and then this table name here I'm going to declare it here, table name, and give it a name of employees, but we want it to have a prefix, so we are going to concatenate a prefix here, prefix dot, but then our prefix is actually in WPDB prefix, right? It's a property on WPDB. So this is going to actually return a prefix and then the name of that table. And what else? And then the queries, like the queries that you give to your database, they should actually be prepared to guard against SQL injection. Usually it's an issue when there is data that is coming from a third party. It could be a user or something like that. So we are going to actually take this query here. We're going to take this query here, WP. So we are going to redeclare this query. Let's redeclare this query. It's the one that is here. And we are going to pass this query into yet another method, WPDB. The method is actually called prepare. So we are putting it into prepare statement. We are making it a prepare statement. So we have prepare and query. Actually, prepare does take not just the query, but also the placeholders, the placeholder values here, right? So this would be placeholder values. You can imagine this query here, this query having, placeholders. Then the placeholders would have something like this one for placeholder for a string, and then the placeholder value would then give the string value that should go there. All right, so I think we will see the use of placeholders in so I think we will see more of these placeholders later on in this video, but here this is all we need. So let me check again. So we have global, we've used global and referenced our WPDB, then table name, we're giving it prefix. Then we have a query, create table if not exists, table name, which is this one. And then its columns is name. It's an integer with auto increment and is also a primary key. Then it has a value, a name of varchar 50 as a column, another column age, which is integer, and dpt column again, which is a varchar of size 50, size up to 50. That's the correct way of saying it actually. Then salary, which is a decimal of size up to 10 and has 2 decimal places. And then this is the query. We are running it through prepare, wp-db prepare, to guard from SQL injection. And then we come here and we give it to wp-db query and run it. So we should expect a table being created, but what does it return? So let's just say ret v, I guess, is equal to, and then I come here and echo ret v, right? So this would give us back feedback, like what happened when we actually ran this. So I'm going to come here and refresh, and you see we have 1, meaning that it was a success. So if you go to our database here and refresh, we should see employees is here. So if we click employees, we see that they have ID, name, age, DPT, and salary. So if we go to select, there is nothing because we did not insert anything, which is what we are going to do next. So let's move on here. And if we run this again, nothing will happen because, like we said, create table if not exists. So we won't get any error. But I am going to just delete this. You can delete or go ahead from here and keep on writing your code. But I am going to delete up to table name here. And now we are going to so the part we just passed is like the part of managing your tables inside the database. If you want to go further, trying to change the column names and even changing the data types of those columns, you can go ahead and look into corresponding SQL queries that do those kind of things. The sky is just the limit. You can do whatever you like with WP query, and just make sure that you are also using prepare in there, wp-db prepare, I mean. Then now we are now creating things. So the first way would be, of course, wp-db and use query, and we're going to give it a query, which is a variable that is not there yet. And I am going to have the query here, which is going to be a string representing a query, right? So this query is going to say insert into, we want to insert into table name. So you can do this, you can just put the variable here, table name. What do we want to insert? We don't want to insert everything, so we don't want to insert the ID because it auto increments it. It is automatically generated and automatically increments. So we have this one, let's say name. And what else do we want to insert? Name. What do they have here? So show structure. Okay. So we want to insert name and also age, DPT, name, age, DPT, as well as salary. Okay, name, age, DPT, as well as salary. And then what are the values that we want to actually insert? Values are going to come in here. This is where we actually use those placeholders. We're going to use placeholders. But before that, let me show you how the values would be. Let's say the name would be mine first, and then age, let me lie and put like 43. And then what else? Okay, this is about the strings. Okay, and then let's put what else are we going to put? Department, let's say ICT department. And then lastly, the salary, I'm going to give myself a $2,500.50, right, with 2 decimal places. So this would be how the query like without preparing it, without trying to escape stuff, so that we are not, SQL injected. And yes, of course, in this case, we would be SQL injected. Just imagine these values are coming from a form. Someone could just go ahead and make these ones as SQL queries, and then they would just mess up our query in here. So we are going to actually use prepare. So with prepare, we come here and say we are redefining our query, and say wp-db prepare, and give it the query as well as these values here, right? These values here. Okay, so these are the placeholder values. So you can put them in a single line if you want, which is what I'm going to do, because I feel like it makes more sense and it's easier to see at a glance, right? So this is the prepare statement, and then the values. But then we're going to come here and do this. Okay, we're going to do this, give it an S for string, and here a D for numbers, decimal, I guess. And then this one is a string again. We put an S, and this is a floating point number. We do something like this. So now we have used a more advanced prepare statement with the placeholders. So it takes a query with placeholders, and then the placeholder values are put here. So this should be all right. And what does it do? What does it return? The query, we're using the WP query, of course. It returns the affected tables, I guess. All right, so we say rate var is equal to that. So we come here and say echo rate var. Okay, let me check again, cross check again. This should work. We should see my name inserted in the table. So we go here and we refresh. Okay, we are seeing a 1, meaning 1 row affected, or either it could be the previous one, but it wouldn't be because the query is now different. So I'm going to go ahead and check inside our table. Let's select table and see what is in there. Yes, my name is in here, meaning that the insertion actually worked. So we are going to go ahead, and I'm going to show you another way of doing this insertion without writing a single query. Right here, writing this query here, it might feel like in an unfamiliar territory, especially when you are inside your PHP code like this. But WordPress created for us some kind of like an abstraction, a method that abstracts away all this part. So it's like that method is actually the one that is doing all this part here, right? All this part here. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and delete everything up to where? Up to here and here. Okay. So the one we are going to use is actually called, of course, it's on WPDB. It's called insert, just like that. How cool is that? So it's just insert, and you do not write any query in there. So let's go ahead and try to see the documentation of insert. I'm going to say Control F and say these and then insert. I'm searching the wrong place. So come here and say insert. Then we have two of those. So it's here, WPDB insert. I was supposed to just open it in new tab, but it's okay. So insert, it takes in a string, which is a table, the name of the table, and it then take the data that we want to insert, and then it will take a string, right, which is a format, right? By default, it's now, and then it will return an integer or false. Let's see what this integer is about. Okay, so where is the return? The number of rows inserted. Okay, the number of rows inserted. As we know that insertion can be done, you can insert more than one row, right? So this is an array of data, okay, that you would be inserting, and will be given the feedback how many rows were actually affected by this array of data being inserted. Now I'm going to go ahead. So this is an example of using the insert, right? So this is the table, right? And then this is the array of data. It's column. It's actually column name and the value to insert in there. So you can imagine this as a row, right? As a row, you are inserting into this row. And then there is, so here they're actually not using the escaping, right? So here they are not using the format string. The format string will be used inside the insert method. The insert method actually uses prepare inside itself, and they need to use that format string to actually prepare, to actually put the placeholders, right? It will use that format as placeholders for the values that you have given it. So I'm going here into my code, and my insert is going to expect, of course, the table name, and then the data. I'm going to create that one in a moment, as well as format. Okay, so the data and format would be two arrays that are equal in length. Then, so I'm going to come here and say this is data, and this is format. Okay, so data is an associative array with things that we want to put. So it's the key is going to be, we're going to insert name, right? And its value is going to be Sansa stack. And then we're going to insert what else? Let me go back to our database and show the structure. and then we are inserting name, age. We're not inserting the ID because it's added automatically. Age, we're going to say Sansa Stack is 25, and then we're going to say department, DPT. Department is going to be customer service. Then we have salary. We start here at 1,250 cents because everyone gets the 50 cents here. And what else is there? I think we are done with that part. And then inside the format, these are going to be strings. The first one is going to be an S matching with this value here. And then next one is going to be D matching with this one, followed by yet another S, and then a float. Okay, so this is all. So this is for data and this is for format, and that should be all. So if I run this, we should see Sansa Stack being added there. But what does insert return? Let's go here. Oh, we were told already, we've looked at that. So let's come back and actually run this. And we did not print anything. So let's go back. We did not print anything because the code doesn't say print something, right? In case you are wondering. So we come to this database table and we select. We see we now have 2 people in here. So this was insertion. So it's actually better to use this second method because this one you do not have to write any SQL, and behind the scenes WordPress have also included everything that is good for your code. So just use this when you are actually inserting your stuff, and don't leave the format, because the format part is going to make sure that your SQL is actually secure. So this was it on the creation part. On the creation part of the CRUD, we are going to delete and move on to something else, which is reading, that is the selection of items. So reading, I don't think we can use the query, the WPDB query for reading from our database, but there are some facade functions. There are some methods that we were given for free for us to actually read from the database. So the reading would actually include reading, different types of things. We might be reading a single value, a row, or a lot of rows, right? When we read, we might return a single value, or we might return a single row, or we might return an array of rows, right? Okay, so for the first one, which is a single value, the WPDB has a method called get var. Okay, get var, which I suppose it means get a variable. So the get var at the end, we actually do write SQL queries here. So it will have a SQL query. Of course, it has to be prepared. So it has a SQL query, and then this is the query, and that query must be prepared. It's got WPDB PDB prepare. Okay, so it's a prepared query we are giving to it, but it will return one item at the end. So you would imagine, let's say, returning the total of the salaries we are giving, total salary we are giving to our employees. So let's do something like that and write a query for that. I think it's select, right? Select, think sum of what? Sum of salary from table name, right? So we'll get the sum of the salary, which should be, I don't know how much. So here is going to be the value. So salary total is going to be that. If we come here and say echo salary total, we should see the salary total. Let me cross check that everything is in order. Select sum from, and then we prepare, and then we get var. Now let's go back and refresh and see what we have. You see, we have the total salary in dollars, right? So that is our total salary, 3,000 something. I don't know if I might need to zoom in here, right? That is the total. And then we might also want to actually retrieve a full row. So let's go ahead and delete everything up to here, of course. And then to do that, we will need, of course, WPDB. Everything is on WPDB, as we might be already expecting by now. And this is get row. This one is named really well. And this one would take again a query. Prepared, of course, and it can take a second argument, like what kind of, what we want that row to be like. Do we want it to be an array, an associative array, or a number indexed array, or an object, which is the default? An object, which is the default, right? So we can just leave it because it is the default. And now let's build the query. The query, I love to go slow on the queries. So our query is going to be that we want to select all from table name where name, okay, we don't want name, where ID is equal to 2, is equal to 2, is it 2 or 1? The second one, we want the second one actually. It's 2. We want to select where the ID is equal to 2, right? So this is like a bare SQL query without passing it through prepare. So if we are going to do the prepare, we are going to deal with this part here. Here we are going to give it a placeholder, %d, okay? And then we come here and say our query is actually a WPDB dpdb prepare. Then we give it our old query. There's a placeholder, and then the placeholder value is going to be 2. We want the ID of 2. And if we run this, we should see our row here. And of course, let's assign it to a variable. Let's call it person, or just employee would work. And what we're going to do at the end is to print R. Let me echo the pre tags before and after, so that we have it well formatted. Then we print R. What is happening here? Did we leave anything? Echo. Yeah, that is fine. Then we print R. Then we do the person. Okay. So that should be the row returned. So if we come here and refresh, unquote, you probably already seen it. Of course, he had no way of telling me. So it's WPDB instead of WPDP, like I did there. WPDB. Okay, and then I refresh. You see, I have Sansa stack there. So you can imagine you can access any value that is in there and do whatever I like with it. For example, we can just come here below the pre-tag and maybe echo person name. Okay, and we'll refresh that. We have Sansa stack at the bottom, and we can also come here and say we don't want this one to be the object as is the default, but rather as an array that is associative, and refresh it. Then here I'm accessing the wrong way, so you can see that it's now an associative array. So if I want to access this one, I would rather do this. I would do this and say name and go refresh. You see it works. We can also use an indexed array, which is not really useful because we lose these keys and then they become just numbers, and I think that is not very useful. So that is it, I think, with the WPDB get row. That is for getting, that is the reading that is going to return us a single row or a single entry or a single person or whatever. Right, now we want to actually return an array of people, an array of rows. To do that, there is yet another method. We start, of course, with WPDB, and the method is named get. You'd say it's get rows. You'd think it's get rows, right? But it's not. It's actually get results. Okay? It is get results, and of course, it expects a query, right? And this query will be here, a string. But of course, we want these things escaped. So we're going to come over here and redefine it. WPDB prepare. And we're going to put the query, and of course we should expect placeholders, should we? Right, we might have placeholders or not. Okay. In this case, what we want to do is actually select all from database table name, table name, and we do not need placeholders, so it should be fine like this. And if we come here, we can actually get the results from here. and say employees. We come over and echo the pre-tag, the opening one as well as the closing pre-tag. Then this is what we have, and then we print our employees. Let's go ahead and run, but before that, let me just cross check to make sure everything looks good, and then we refresh. So this is an array of employees. So we have array index 0 here and array index 1. So the type of these items in the array are actually objects, right? These are objects, so an array of objects. So if you want to change these to be something else, to be arrays, for example, we would use that second argument, right? The second argument here, where is it here? And say array A, for example, right? But you have already seen how this works. But you can imagine that after this, you'd then loop through this. Let me just demonstrate. Maybe want to write the names only, right? We would loop through. We remove this. So say for each, let's say employees as employee, what do we want to do? We can go ahead and then echo employee name. Maybe we echo that inside a paragraph so that we actually have breaks. Okay, and then that's it. So if we refresh, we should see these two employees of ours, and I think that is it with the reading from our database. So we are going to go ahead and do the editing, okay, the updating. So let's select everything and delete it, and we want to actually update Sansa stack and probably increase her salary a little bit to something around 1,550 cents. So we are going to come here and use yet another WPDB, right, function method called update, right? It takes in three things, I think. It takes in the table name as well as the data and format. The data is actually, no, it takes in the where, right? It takes in the where, and then the format as well as the where format. Okay, it takes in the where. It takes in the table name, the data, and the where, and the format for the data, as well as the format for the where. Let's actually go ahead and look into the documentation so that I make sure that I am not lying to you here. So if we go back We can go back from this one. Right, let's look for insert. Are we using insert here? Update, I mean. So this is our update. So it takes in a string table and then data and then the where, as well as the format and then the where format, right? It looks like this, okay? It looks like this. So this is the one without caring about security, and then this is the one when we actually care about security, okay? So it uses prepare inside itself. And then, so what we are going to do is go ahead and set our table name is there, right? Data. The data, what is going on? The data is going to be an array. And then inside that array, we are going to set, the data is like what you're going to set to. So we're going to set salary, okay, if I can type properly, salary to 1,550 and 75 cents. No, everyone is getting 50 cents. And yeah, so that is the data. And the where is an array like that also. We want to where name is Sansa stack, or we want to where ID is equal to 1, right? Where ID is equal to 1. And then, yeah, I think that is enough on the where. Now we want of course, the semicolon. Now we want the format of the data. What is the format of the data? The salary is equal to it's actually equal to this float, and the where format is equal to where this ID is equal to, it's an integer, it's a number, so we're going to put a D, then make sure that we put the semicolon, and this should be able to update the salary of Sansa to 1,550 and 50 cents. So just to double check, and everything looks fine to me. I go here and refresh, right? I've refreshed, and if I go here and refresh again, we should see this salary here changing. It did not change. Let's go ahead and see what we have mistaken. What mistake have we made? So we have table name and data, the where, the format, and the where format, right? So let's go to our function, to our method, to make sure that we actually did everything correctly. Right, so table, data, the where, then the format, then the where format. So that, I think we've done it correctly. And where did we miss? Table name, yes. Data, yes. Where, yes. Does the ID look like that inside the, yes, correct. Correct spelling for ID. Format is F. Is this F? Yes, it is. And then where format, the D, is this D? Yes, it is. Then we say update table, data, where, format, and where format. So what is wrong here? What is wrong here? I go to localhost and refresh. Nothing. Refresh again, nothing. So now I think it's time to actually meet our friends, meet our friends methods that are useful when debugging. There is something called show errors, right? If you come here, there is WPDB. Let's go on top there. Say WPDB show errors. This is one of the methods that can help us with debugging. So I come here and refresh, right? Undefined WPD. You guys were seeing this and you did not tell me. So where is WPD? It's supposed to be WPDB. No. So it's actually giving an error on something else, which is not part of the original one, right? It's not showing anything here. So for us to actually see something, we need to come here below this line here and say WPDB print error. Print error. I can spell that correctly. Go ahead and refresh here. This is the error. So update WP employees set salary to that where ID is equal to that. Okay. So what is wrong here? WP employees, okay, set salary is equal to that, right, where ID is that. So what is wrong with that query? We go ahead. I don't see anything wrong really. WP update employees set salary to that. We have a column called salary, right? Maybe the number is too big. Nah, that shouldn't be the error. WPDB update. This is actually interesting. You go and refresh here. Man, it changed. There was no error from the beginning, so so we have actually changed the salary of ID number 1 instead, right? So we were targeting this one, but we changed this one, but it's okay. Right. So I've actually seen that after, trying to fix things that are not there. I was supposed to have put 2 here, but it's okay. So yeah, I should have maybe paid more attention there, but it's okay. So this one here, but it's a good thing that we ended up having a chance to actually see these. If you have an error, you can, if there is an error, you can use these, because by default errors are not printed, so you can actually see the errors from here. Yeah, very sorry I had to actually go with you up to there, but I was correct from the beginning. I probably wasn't paying attention. I'm not going to delete this one because I'm hoping that it's going to be useful actually, because we have learned some things along the way. Now let us move to the next one. By the way, you can also use the query, WPDB query, to do this, right? You can use WPDB query and use your own prepared do this, but this is already done for you, so it should be straightforward. And then the final one is actually the delete. So instead of the update, we are going to use the delete. WPDB delete. It again takes in the table name, but here it takes the where. Okay, so before you delete, you need to actually try to run maybe a select and make sure that you are deleting the right person. So we are going to actually delete Sansa Stack here and leave myself. So we're going to say WPDB delete. It's already there. Okay, so we are going to delete. So my video is becoming too long and I'm becoming too tired also. So we come here and say we already have the table name, so we want the where to be equal to, so it's not just where, there's a where format also, right? Where format, to make sure that I'm not lying to you. Let me go back here and search for delete. I hope I'm in the right page. So we are looking for delete, and here it is. So if we click on delete, it has table and the where, and then the where format, as I said. So let's go ahead and put our where. We want where to be, let's go here. We want where the name is this one. Oh, the ID is 2. Okay. Where it's an array, of course. An array where the ID, not di, the ID is equal to 2. And then the where format, the format of the ID, the where format is going to be equal to this one. Okay, so put our semicolon, and then we go ahead and run it. Then after running it, if we come back here and check our table, we should see that we now have just one entry. So I guess this is all. And again, I want to tell you that you can actually use query here also. You can use query and use the, SQL query that is prepared, and then do your own thing. But delete is actually best because WordPress did all that for you. And as for the miscellaneous, we have looked at the errors when I got lost a bit. I guess we no longer need to look at those. but we are going to go ahead and look at some of the miscellaneous things that are inside WPDB query. So there is something called now I'm going to delete everything actually right here, and then say WPDB. There is a property called num queries. So this shows us how many queries were ran up to where we are right now. Okay, so if you go ahead and echo num queries, we should see the number of queries that were ran. So it could be hours, or it could be in the plugins, or it could be those ran by WordPress by default. So if you come here and refresh, we should see that there are 15 queries that have been run. So yours might be different depending on what you have in your installation. You might have plugins, this number would be different, or you might have written one or two of your own queries, and it would be different. So if I put my query on top here, it would be counted also, and then we'd have, for example, 16. So you can go ahead and try it and see if it is what we are talking about. And then next one, let's say there's num rows, total number of rows returned by the last query. So if we say echo num rows, now let me just use a single echo. So there's something called num rows as num rows as a property. It returns like the number of rows that were returned by the latest query. Like let's say we had a query here. Let's say we had a query here, that would probably be the latest. But like in a group of a lot of queries from your plugins and from within WordPress, there would be the latest one and would actually return a number of rows. So let's see. We click, it actually returned just a single row, which is fine. And now there is something called last result. So the most recent results, right? So let's say last result is actually the number of rows. Last result, the number of rows that were so the last result, I mean, it represents, it is inside the number of rows. I'm not sure if that makes sense. So if we print R, well, this is last result. Okay, the result that came from a query, we have to print R. If we refresh, this is the last result, right? And it returned number of rows. If you can see, there's count here, and then there's one, that is that one that we got. And now we go ahead and look at another one. It's called last query, right? The query that was, that was run as of latest. So we come here and say last, right? So it's last query. So this was the query that was recently ran. So it's this one, taxonomy what. If you remember, the result had things to do with uncategorized, which is like taxonomy, which is like a taxonomy term, right? A built-in one. And then we want column info, the column information for the most recent query. So we can have things like WPDB call info. Refresh, right? So this is the information about the last column, right? The most recent query. So they're telling us like what is it, name, term ID, what, And then there is another one also called WPDB queries. This is useful when you want to see like what queries are actually running in your installation. This can help you. For example, if there is speed issues, you can see what needs to be optimized and queries that shouldn't be running, and they are running. WPDB DB, it's called queries, right? If I come here, let me print it. Print R queries and refresh it. Undefined queries. Okay, undefined method WPDB queries. Is the spelling wrong or what? WP, no, it's not a method. It's supposed to be just a property, and I'm getting nothing. Actually, for this to work, you need to go ahead and you need to save the queries, right? For you to do that, you need to go inside your installation. If you go inside your installation, you go inside WP config, go to app public, inside WP config. Where is our WP config? It's here, and let's open it. And you come over here, let's open. Then you come over here and towards the bottom, I guess, so that you don't mess up things, you come here and say define save queries, and make sure that it is true, because by default it is false. So let me close this, and this should be saved. And if I come here and then refresh, you can see these are the queries that are being run, but they don't look pretty. To prettify them, let's come here inside our index and probably put a pre-tag, or maybe loop them one by one and print them. But no, let's just put a pre-tag. So let's echo pre. All right, and then we close our pre-tag, and we refresh. It should look nicer now. So these are the queries. So this is the query, right? And this, I think, is time it takes, and this, I think, is where it's being called, right? And the array, I'm not sure what it is about. You can go ahead and research more about it. So I think I have talked about everything. So just go ahead and think around, break things, see what works and what doesn't. And like learning comes when you break things, at least when it comes to learning code. And also make sure that you are breaking things that are not live, and make sure if you are going to deal with things that is live, you create a backup of your database, and make sure that if anything just goes south, you can always come back. So I thank you guys for watching, and I am going to see you in the next one.